which is a Hebrew word for peace in a standard reading. But the reason why I'm coming to you is because there is no peace or a lack of peace in a part of the world that's very special to me. And I'd like to say I'm glad to be with you, but I'm not with you. And I'm not even glad to share this video with you. You would hope that a speaker's coming to conference and she or he is excited to be there. They're anointed, got the word of the Lord. But the reason why I'm here, the reason why I'm coming to you this way, to you there, um, is because of a tragedy that's related to the lack of shalom that I mentioned earlier. Uh, I'm not glad to be coming to you with this story because it's a tough one. Steve, our president, asked me to take a look at the book and to speak to for about the situation in Gaza. Let me just say, as I'm making this video right now, uh, my wife, with others, was slated to be on an airplane heading to Israel, but that got turned around because the airport shuttered. As I'm making this video right now, a film crew that I work with is stranded in Israel. They're part of 60,000 people that are trying to get out, that are stuck because the airports are shuttered, given the exigent circumstances, given the troubles of the day. With that said, another reason why I'm not particularly glad to be here with you doing this is because I tried to get there. I looked at a few venues to see if there's a way that I could get in. If it's going to sound strange, if there's a war there, I want to be part of it. Sounds strange to say that. I was thinking of Israel's War of Independence initially. They needed an Air Force. They didn't have one. Their Air Force crop dusters. Um, they opened up the side door and threw out Molotov cocktails. In the 48 War of Independence, in subsequent wars, they didn't have resources, so Jewish pilots went there, and planes got kind of stuck into the country, if you will. But the fledgling state took whatever help they could get. Well, I had sent a couple emails saying, look, I'm a retired police officer, police commander, and I don't know if, didn't didn't excite anyone to speak of, even if they're taking volunteers. There's something about a 68-year-old soldier that doesn't garner a lot of confidence. Well, this isn't about me. I'm just saying by way of introduction that I'm not glad to be here talking about this with you there. I'd rather be there personally with you, by the way, but that wasn't doable with my schedule. I wanted to get to you because if Steve Riggle calls, I really try and respond out of respect I have for him, never mind love for you, and I have both in this case. I've been part of the Grace family for decades. I don't need to hold out any credentials in that regard. But I'm always glad to be with the Grace family, though I'm sad to have to tell this story. What I want to do is gaze at Gaza. It's timely in the extent that certainly Gaza's in the news. And frankly, I don't know what the condition is going to be the news is going to be in by the time this gets to you. Things are so dynamic. They're so fluid right now that, there was trouble in Gaza, to be sure, as you're aware of. But it's breaking out regionally with Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon, with Syria jumping into it, and of course Iran is forever in the background. I don't know exactly what the case is going to be on Thursday, on Friday. I mean, I'm doing this around lunchtime on Wednesday, and then I'm heading in a car and driving down to Houston and coming to you from my home office. But what I want to do is look at Gaza. I want to open up the Bible, and the Bible speaks to Gaza on a number of occasions. Though they're descriptive, harking to past wars, past struggles, past engagements. Gaza itself doesn't draw an inordinate amount of prophetic fire like other regional players do. Gaza is a small outpost. We're looking proximate to 150 square miles. It's not inordinate right now. We're looking at a population in the vicinity of 1.5 million. It doesn't have an inordinate amount of people mass, never mind land mass, and it never did. Gaza, I'm going to look at the pages in scripture for a moment. Gaza, however, um, doesn't occupy a lot, but it bubbles up occasionally in the prophets on a number of occasions. I'm not going to look at all of them. And I'm not even claiming that the prophets are speaking to the moment today. But I want to look and see how they do speak because it's worthy of giving it a hearing. Um, my interest in Gaza and prophecy, which is worthy of some reflection, has less to do with Gaza specifically because it's not a major player for the aforementioned reasons. Gaza factors significant in prophecy, say some, and I'm happy to lend some weight to that. I'm always suspicious of people claiming to know about history's endgame because sometimes the scenarios they conjure up or concoct, they're not worth the paper they're written on, not long after they've written their book. And the reason why I wanted to go with concoct instead of conjure is conjure kind of brings up witchcraft and demonic, and I don't mean that. A lot of dedicated people are looking at biblical literature and, trying to ascertain the end, and they're concocting. There's certain schemes that are envisioned. There's nothing heinous or diabolical about it, but the point is everyone has to keep adjusting their scenarios. So there's a sense in which anybody that jumps into the fray and offers a telling of history's endgame, what can I say? It's an industry that's wrought with a lot of inaccuracy. But the reason why I would bring Gaza into the fore is less about Gaza in and of itself, given the size of the population and the size of the landmass. It's not a threat in and of itself, but Gaza is worth a gaze initially because Gaza is in effect an Iranian proxy. Now, which is rather odd because Gaza, it's constituted by Sunni Muslims principally, 99%. Only a small sampling of others, but Iran, it's a Shiite Muslim empire, if you will, a major player in the region for a variety of reasons. But it's Shiite Muslim, and Sunni and Shia have a tradition of hating and killing each other. But what you have in common here amongst some who are perennial enemies for centuries is a disdain for Jews. And it's fueled by, with technology and resource and expertise, the cascading unrest in Gaza, the fermenting discontent that spills over into incursions into Israel. The modern nation state is fueled by this Iranian intrigue. Now, that has some biblical significance. A major player, not only out of the Gaza, but if you want to look at northern Israel, if you want to look at Lebanon, there's Hezbollah, another organization that's constituted principally by Sunni Muslim, but it's enforced by Shia, by Iran that sends technology and expertise. Thousands of rockets. We haven't even really heard from them in mass yet, as compared to what's stockpiled there. So, you wouldn't even call Iran the silent partner, because Iran is definitely, they want to be the tip of the spear to destroy the Jewish nation state. Israel's had success in negotiating with Islamic nation states roundabout. Relations with Egypt were normalized. Relationships with Jordan, were relationships with Saudi Arabia are in progress. There's a sense in which, amongst the Sunni Muslim Arab neighbors, things have been normalized, but obviously not the case with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Again, when you hear those names, you should just think of Iran. Iran's the major player looking to be at the tip of the spear to stir up this hornet's nest. It's rather interesting. It's rather complex. What I want to do with you is just to light upon the fact that Gaza is notated in biblical literature in no uncertain terms, where Gaza draws ire. And what I want to do is explore that with you a little bit. If you look at Amos chapter 1, now when you look at Amos, you're looking at one of the prophets in the northern kingdom of Israel. And if you look in chapter 1, verse 6, thus says Adonai, thus says the Lord, for 3 crimes of Gaza. And by the way, when Gaza is mentioned in biblical literature, we're referencing the land of Gaza that you know today. It's one of the oldest cities in the world, been around for a long time. Different players. I mean, there's no Islam here. Never mind a version of Islam that is Shia Islam stirring, never mind Sunni Muslims, never mind the nation of Iran. There's none of that. He says here, thus says Adonai, for 3 crimes of Gaza, even for 4, I will not relent. Even here he's saying, time and time again, the Lord, thus says, well, I've had it with you time and time again. Stuff keeps coming up. And there's a list of crimes that are noted here, abbreviated, that are noted elsewhere. And we'll look at it in a reference. He says, for they exiled an entire population, giving them over to Edom. Now, Edom, is to the east of Israel. And he says, what it is here there's a war, there's a skirmish. They take a whole people group and sell them off into slavery. He says, so I will send fire on the wall of Gaza. It will devour its citadels. I'm going to take you down. That it kind of harks to an old battle where the Gazans got the upper hand. And what they did is they were very unkind in what they did to an entire population, just sold Hebrews into slavery. I want you to go to Joel, where this isn't even a tacit reference. If you look in Joel chapter 4, he says, moreover, what are you to me, Tyre and Sidon, and all regions of Philistia? Who do you think you are? Now, Tyre and Sidon are mentioned. These are Phoenician areas that hug the eastern seaboard of the Mediterranean. And then he says, and the regions of Philistia. Now, while it's true here, Gaza isn't mentioned by name, but Gaza is one of 5 cities that were Philistine cities. You might recall Samson, who, with the Philistine Delilah, and Samson is going to go and attack Gaza and make off with the city gates. Eventually, his wife's going to cut his hair, and then it's going to grow back, and he's going to be there in Gaza underneath these pillars. He's going to pull them apart, and the Gazan elite are going to be destroyed in a day. And it will say in the book of Judges that as a warrior, this man accomplished more in his death than he did in his life. It's harking back to old skirmishes amongst the Philistines. The Philistines, and you can't go, Palestinians, Gaza, not so quick. To assign names today to yesteryear, at least when we're looking at biblical literature. when he speaks to Philistia here, or the Philistines, we're looking at literature and a people that predate the Islamic conquest of Israel. The Muhammad is born in 570 A.D. He starts the religion in 16 A.D. 610 A.D. After he dies, his generals will then advance north into the Holy Land and then sweep over North Africa and push their way, eastward and make their way into, what we'll call Iran today. I mean, you find that expansionism in a later generation. But the Philistines had invaded Judea in 1200 BC. We're 2,000 years before um, the Philistines or the Palestinians that are referred to today, that have borrowed the name, but they come from a different place. It's a different world. The Philistine, as they were known, the Philistines invaded uh, North Africa and east in Canaan in the 12th century BC. Ramses the Great in Egypt, held off an invasion of the Sea Peoples, our Philistines. So they didn't have success against the Egyptians, but they went east and got a toehold in the land of Canaan, and they established a number of cities there, hugging the coast. Uh, uh, Gaza was one, Ashkelon, Gath. There were five principles. And here in Joel, there is this prophetic word. What are you to me, Tyre, Sidon, and all the regions of Philistia? And and he goes on and speaks about uh, the violence they did. Um, you took my silver and my gold and my people, he says. He says, if you look in verse 6, the children of Judah and Jerusalem you sold to the Greeks in order to remove them far from their own territory. It's harking back to times past when the Philistines had raided and conquered and plundered. And he mentions the children of Judah here, whom they, in the wake of the battle, sold into slave stock, removing them from their land, sold them to the Greeks in order to remove them far from their own territory. Slaves. They beat them in battle, they enslaved them and sold them off to the Greeks. Now, what's interesting here for my money is that the Hebrew people in Jerusalem who were defeated and exiled, in the literature, the prophetic word is you took them from their land and did that. Now, what's explicit there, it's not even inferred. What's explicit is there is some kind of biblical association between that people and that land. And here, the Philistine cities, Gaza being one, are culpable in removing them from it. Arguably, when you look at Amos, and Amos isn't just, uh, you know, ticking away at Gaza. He's ticking away at the various Philistine cities, Gaza being one. He says to them, for 3 crimes of Gaza, he says, you exiled a population. You gave them over to Edom in that case. He says in verse 8, moving on, I will cut off Ashdod, wielding Ashkelon's scepter. I will turn my hand against Ekron. Now, Ashdod, he mentions here, Ashkelon, Gaza. I mean, these are cities that you might hear about. The one that you hear about now is Gaza. And by the way, I'm not trying to say, alas, look what it says in the literature, judgment on Gaza, and let's just apply it. When that prophet spoke yesterday, he's speaking about today. which is, by the way, a problem I have with people that purport to be Bible prophecy experts. Stuff happens in the region, and guys need speaking engagements, and they want to sell books because if you go on a speaking engagement, you sell the book for $25, you're probably making $20 on the deal. And if you can, it's nice to get a stipend, never mind to augment your income with book sales on top. So what people do is they go, look at yesterday, here's what it's saying today, and by the way, buy my message and buy this book. I just, that's what I speak about. You sell your credibility for a scrap of notice and a couple of dollars. I'm not trying to say that it's inherently wicked. I get, because people open up the Bible, the word from yesterday, and want to hear how it's speaking of today. And but I lay no siege to the claim that what we're looking at here in Amos and then in Joel, I'm not laying any siege to the claim that what we're looking at here is predicting what's at play now specifically. Well, you say, Jeffrey, why bring up the point? We're all busy people. You're speaking a word. I mean, listen, we'd rather have a live speaker. If we've got to watch a video here in Wisconsin, at least give us something that speaks to the moment. But you instead want to open up the Bible from yesteryear and say, listen, I'm making no claim that it applies. No, I'm making no claim that the text that's spoken here is applying to the moment now. But there's something at play here that plays out, to use a Hebrew expression, dor lador, from generation to generation. And that is, you find this anti-Judaism, you find this disdain for Hebrew peoples. And here, this prophet Amos and here this prophet Joel are speaking to, for, and about that. And they're casting their gaze, in this case, in language, at Gaza. We could look at Gaza in Zephaniah. We could look at Gaza in Zechariah. I'm not exhausting all the Gazan references. But what you find in biblical literature is it's always the case that these regional peoples are chipping away at the Hebrew people. Now, that's a story, unfortunately, that just goes on from generation to generation. In fact, I was this morning at a men's Bible study. And by the way, I can go to a Bible study if I'm not the teacher. I mean, I'll be at the Grace Conference in my region in October, and I'm not on the docket. I don't have to be the guy with the mouth in order to present myself. Every Wednesday morning early, I like to go to a men's prayer breakfast just around the corner from my house. Just like to do it. And the guy that teaches it, he's a great brother, Pastor Brian. Some people say, well, Seif, you're this snotty PhD. You have to have a doctorate degree for you to sit at their table. You can only hear from the elites. No, I mean, Pastor C's a great brother, that he's a pastor. He's not an academic like I am. And we open up the scripture, and it's the word of God gives life. The unfolding imparts understanding. It's inspirational. I like to get together with the men. I mean, I visit there, and I'm my own congregation, a Messianic Jewish congregation that meets on Friday nights, and I like to be proximate to the word, and Pastor Brian's going through the story of the life of Joseph, and when you go to Joseph, Yosef, which by the way is my Hebrew name, and when we go to Joseph, we're going to the book Bereshit, Genesis. And we're at the end of Genesis. There's Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. There's a woman that Jacob had the hots for initially before it all began, Rachel. But unfortunately, that he got snookered by his father-in-law. and married Rebecca, and then he have pick up all these wives, but this dysfunctional family. He's going to marry Rachel, bless her heart, but she can't have a child. Finally, she has a kid, Joseph, and then another Benjamin, and dies. Joseph was number 11 in the birth order, but he was special to his dad because this was the firstborn son of the woman he really loved before life got complicated. Well, he's favored in his family. His brothers pick it up and they don't like it. And Joseph is busy talking about dreams, which gives to schemes. Eventually, Joey's going to be thrown in a pit and sold into slavery in Egypt. And you're familiar with the story, and this was a story um, that Pastor Brian alighted upon this morning. You're saying, "What are you talking about your devotional this morning? We're supposed to be in Gaza." Well, hear me. So what happens is that Pastor Brian is looking at the story of Joseph in Potiphar's house. You're probably familiar with the story, and Joseph is just a stellar guy. I mean, he just behaving great, and he's responsible. He's intelligent. He's looking after his master's affairs. But speaking about his affairs, his old lady wants to have one. Potiphar's wife, has the hots for the young man, but he just won't have it. And that she's incessant with it, but he just won't. And she grabs him, and he runs away, and she's holding on to his garment. And subsequent to which she's had enough of this guy, and she cries foul. Now, if you look at the objection that she raises, um, she will talk to the servants in the house and saying, "Listen, it wasn't. Listen to that, Joseph." No, she says something different. And then when she speaks to her husband, she doesn't say, "Listen, here's what that Joseph did." Joseph isn't given a name. He's referred to as that Hebrew that you brought into the house. That Hebrew, twice in the way that she tells the story. Now, that's prescient at one point. There's no Hebrews, by the way, in Egypt at the time. Um, Later on, Joseph providentially is going to emerge, and then his family is going to be brought into Egypt. Joseph's going to die, and the Pharaoh that likes him is going to die, and they're going to multiply there as a nation. But what's interesting to me, and it caught my attention, not Pastor Brian, who was interested in resisting temptation, and it's a great point for a guy's talk, for a guy's message. It's a great point. The allure of temptation, you have to run from it. It can snag people. And that's typically what people will go to when they look at the Joseph story. I get it. But to me, I couldn't help with my eyes to alight upon the fact that when she wants to cast aspersions on Joseph, that Hebrew, he doesn't even have a name, as he's associated with a race. And it's prescient. That is, it's prophetic in the sense that it kind of attests to the kind of anti-Judaism that exists in the world even before you have Jews in the world. I mean, when if you look at the book of Genesis, when it comes to a close, when Joseph's family is invited to move into Egypt finally, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little, there's 75 of them. It's just a Bedouin tribe, not even a big one, insignificant. And they go and they settle in the land of Goshen, nothing to speak of. In a nation state that approximates empire, Joseph's kin moving into the place, it's insignificant. 70 or 75 people. But the way those Hebrews, that Hebrew, in other words, the disdain for the race, it really is interesting. And it's tragic. And it's another story, but it's an associated story, because what you're looking at with Gaza, you're looking at a kind of hatred. It's a kind of pent up hatred that defies senses and sensibilities. And by the way, that's manifest. Listen, I don't like war, and neither do you. But look, I mean, I'm not a warrior in the sense of a Stu Johnson, or a warrior in the sense of those of you who served our country in the military, and thank you for that. And I mean that sincerely. Sometimes a man and a woman, you got to suit up and defend. I get that. Now, I didn't do it that way, but I get it. I did it. I still know what it is to wear a Kevlar vest, to have an assault rifle and a gun, because I have over 20 years as a police officer, and I've dealt with problems in the world where I've had to go code 3, lights and sirens, and you jump into it, and I've dealt with it. Now I understand soldiering in the sense that, look, uh, you know, I remember, may she rest in peace, my wife Patty. She went with me on a ride along twice. After this, she said, "Take me home, never again." I was dispatched. There was a gang thing that was erupting, and I was dispatched to it. And I was running code 3, driving really fast. And Patty's objecting. "Can't you slow down?" "No, honey, it's a code 3 call. I got to get there." She said, "You don't have to be the first one, do you?" Here's the point. You have a gang, and they're like a little paramilitary squad, and I'm police, and you go, and we do what we have to do. Men go to war, women go to war. There's an enemy. You do what you have to do. Um, there's rules of engagement as a rule of thumb. If you look at this stuff here, though, it's not even like you're dealing with people. You're dealing with animals. You're dealing with the spirit. Those forces that left Gaza, that went into Israel, you're decapitating babies. It's a war against civilians, for God's sake, that they went into an area proximate to a concert. I would imagine there's some kind of advanced intelligence about that, and they kill 250 kids, concert goers. They go into these various areas, and dozens of babies, they're decapitated. That's not killing someone. It's like Jesus being crucified. Crucifixion isn't killing someone. Oh, you go, "Wait a minute, Jeffrey." Yes, it is. No, crucifixion isn't killing someone. The Romans knew how to kill someone. You knew where to put the spear in the heart. You knew where to do it, where it's over. You thrust them through and they're dead. Crucifixion isn't killing someone. Crucifixion is it's a statement. You're taking someone's life as slowly and as painfully as possible. That's not just killing someone. Romans knew how to kill someone and make it over with. No, that's making a statement. Don't mess with Rome. Because crucifixion is designed to take your life as painfully and as slowly as possible. And it's not just about executing a malefactor, someone who's allegedly guilty of something. It's making a statement to those who would observe it. That's what crucifixion is. Even the word excruciating comes from the Latin excrucius, which means from the cross. That's a statement that's being made. We're not just killing Jews. We're not just killing Israelis. We're making a statement with this. That is to say, this kind of activity is so heinous. This is not even an attempt to do this within the context of the rules of war. As bad as war is, oddly, there's rules of war. We're not even complying with any of this. This is something else. And if I said it's from the pit of hell, that you wouldn't accuse me of exaggerating. Sometimes you can say, "Well, that preacher's exaggerating." I don't think you would. And I don't know that you need to see the pictures. And by the way, they circulate. And there's glorying in it. You kill babies and say, "God is great." I mean, I can understand it. I'm in pretty good shape for an old guy, tell you the truth. I am. My knees hurt me this morning, but I'll go out and run 5 miles, and I may make my way to the gym. Maybe some guy has a fight with me, and he wins and says, "Allah Akbar." It's face-to-face combat. I got a gun, and he's got a gun, and we do what we got to do. Or I got a knife, and then he wins. Allah Akbar. He's proud. That here I am of proximate stature and skill, and he won. I could understand someone. I won. A little bravado. You beat the chest. Yeah, but you're the hero. God is great, right? You're ripping heads off of babies and killing women. and innocent civilians. Yeah, yeah, that's really something to boast about. No, no, when you're looking at activity like that, you're seeing something else. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from the pit of hell by way of Iran. Now, Iran's another story. Now, this is a talk that, you get 45 minutes and, I'm at 35. Now, Iran, um, listen, I listen to my president, the president, the current president, um, and I listened to him when he talked about standing with Israel. And it's probably the first time he ever opened his mouth when I really hear it. I mean, he represented my sentiments. And I thought what he did was really, really good with his words. And this morning, I was glad to see that the first of, I hope, other plane loads of munitions are making their way to Israel. I was glad to see that. I was glad to hear him, quite frankly. And I was glad to see that. But I can't ignore the fact that he just gave $6 billion to Iran a few weeks ago. That's like burning both ends of the candle. Yeah, well, they said they weren't going to use it, and we can track it, and we can see how they're using it for these positive endeavors. Well, that's great. Well, then monies that they previously were planning to use for those positive nation building endeavors, they can now free up those funds and put them somewhere else. Duh. Iran. And, look, I'm in and out of Israel. Not as much as Barry, by the way. I was there 3 times a year, but, I was there 2 times a year. I was there once this year. But I have friends there. In fact, when I talk to them, when I would talk to them, open up the news in Israel, it's always Iran, 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 Iran. Not because of Gaza, just because Iran is construed as the principal existential threat to Israel by Israelis. By Israelis. I know you probably heard our president. The greatest existential threat is global warming. That's what's the biggest threat, according to him, after he just gave $6 billion to Iran. Maybe he's doing whatever the speechwriters are just telling him to do, and say, I don't know. I'm happy for the speech he gave. Let's leave it at that. Can't criticize the man every time he opens his mouth. Glad to hear that. $6 billion. I don't even know how many millions are in a billion. 6. Beyond my pay grade. $6 billion. You think that buys 1 or 2 rockets? I'm glad to see a plane load or 2 of ammunition arrive in Israel. There you go. Glad to see it. No. In the Jewish world, Iran has always been the biggest threat. Now, I'll tell you about the Jewish world. And I'm not the most popular guy in the Jewish world because I believe in Jesus, Yeshua. In fact, we did a series on Bible prophecy, and Benjamin Netanyahu, we got an interview with him. I didn't go do the interview. Sent somebody else who was non-Jewish to go interview him. I wanted to go talk to the prime minister. Hey, I talked to the prime minister. But I figured if he knew me and asked me questions, he might be a little uncomfortable talking to me because, of who I am and what I'm all about. So Will, another guy, went and did the interview. And Will, by the way, wrote a book on Gaza, The Withdrawal. That's a story. Israel gave Gaza to the Palestinians. Didn't even need to. Ariel Sharon did, 2005. Then he was smitten with sickness and died shortly thereafter. Gave away the Gaza. Ariel Sharon it was Israeli territory. Israel built it up, kibbutzes, shopping malls, also great, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's try land for peace. They're saying that, we need to make concessions. Let's try. We got a peace treaty with Egypt. We gave them the Sinai Peninsula. Okay, the Palestinians, there's tensions. Let's try. Let's give them this beautiful parcel. As a, Will wrote a book on the withdrawal and how Israelis were upset. They left these beautiful homes, cities, all of that. What came of it since? What came of that land for peace? But that's tangential. Will went and interviewed Netanyahu, and I remember him very clearly in no uncertain terms. Iran is our number one threat, a nuclear Iran. If Iran could have its way, going nuclear with a nuclear weapon, we promise we're not going to do it. Oh, we promise we won't use that $6 billion to hurt Israel, even though we've already sworn that that's what we're all about, the annihilation of the Jews. No, we promise. Okay, beautiful. Wonderful, wonderful. We promise. Benjamin Netanyahu's concern with a nuclear Iran. I mean, never mind Gaza, never mind Hezbollah. Listen, Iran can do in 6 minutes what Hitler took 6 years to do. That is to exterminate millions of Jews. Push a button, launch, land. That's it. Well, there might be some nuclear fallout with other Muslims in the area. Who cares? They're Sunni Muslims anyways. They're not Shiite Muslims like us. Now, you might not get the difference, and you don't know the tensions. Sometimes Christians can fight. Well, the Baptists have a problem with the Pentecostals, and we have our. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. So you look at the tensions between the Sunni and the Shia. Well, time's up for that. In any case, if you want to know how to pray, what can I say? Keep your eye on Iran. The task here was to take a look at Gaza, and I wanted you to see how, you do hear prophetic words directed to Gaza. And I could make my way around all the nations round about Israel. Prophetic words to them, to them, to them. Ever since there's been Jews, there's a kind of diabolical hatred. I think it comes from the pit of hell, but it inhabits something. And it drives all this. Well, as I close, I want to thank you for bearing with my ramblings a little bit. I would ask you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, at the risk of sounding self-serving, and I really don't mean to be. I have my brands in a few fires as a human being. One is certainly a grace minister. My congregation is a Messianic Jewish congregation. It's Hebrew Christian. I'm not an ordained minister with Grace International. Been with Grace for decades. Didn't just show up. Also, recently, was asked to serve as the executive director for the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. That's an umbrella organization, probably the principal one of the two of the most significant organizations of Messianic Jewish congregations and scholars and what have you. I was honored, by the way, when it went to convention, 92% of the delegates voted me. Well, so, we have all sorts of stuff happening in that position now. I get reports from Israel and this and that, and we're raising monies that we're giving to sending to Israel right away, emergency funds, just in the last 36 hours, thousands and thousands of dollars. We're not taking a dime of it for administrative purposes. We are, for every Messianic Jewish family that has a child that was murdered, that was killed, and we have fallen soldiers, each one of them we're sending a couple $1,000s. There's various Messianic Jewish ministries in Israel, and we're sending money to them to be spent discretionary with various needs that come up given the ravages of war. And of course, they're on the ground and they see what's needed. If anybody in Grace International makes donations to Sar Shalom, Prince of Peace, we are your designated missionaries. You just need to say Israel Relief. I'm not going to take a dime. In fact, we don't. Barry, she never takes a dime. She donates it. Me, if someone invites me to speak, I'll take a dime. She's a better person than me. What can I say? All the money that's given will go directly to the war effort, to the Prince of Peace war effort. I'd appreciate your prayers, by the way, um, for the nation of Israel right now. It's a real tough time. Everyone is super stressed out. This is going to be going on for a while, and just really appreciate your prayers. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Looks like I just hit the 45-minute mark, and it's time to say goodbye. God bless you, my friends. I'll see you at the annual convention, I hope. Ciao.
When we finish today, we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Um, so many years ago now, the Lord dealt with me on our church becoming a house of prayer. Jesus said,
I am just very low. Pastor Steve, questions I have are the ones I get questions. Right on the spot, and it's usually awful, and they hate it. And most of the times I don't, I know what I'm talking about. I just sometimes I don't know how to put a title to it, or sometimes I just don't know what I'm talking about, which is happens a lot. And so this time I told them right up front. I was trying to almost make a joke to the media folks. I said, because today I brought three titles. Everybody complaining about titles. You know what? I brought three titles. You want titles? I'll give you titles. And I gave them three titles. I said, you use whichever fits the best. The first title I gave to the congregation was, why should everybody be at prayer meeting every Wednesday? Now, just like when I got up here, I got here a few a.m. That's okay. So I went to the second title. And the second title was, why should every church have a corporate prayer gathering? Didn't get a lot of amen. And then we got to the third, a little bit more poetic title, how does heaven perceive our prayer? And I am convinced that if a church would be aware of the answer to the third title, how does heaven perceive our prayer, then we would have more of the first two titles. We would have more people showing up at prayer meetings, and we would have more pastors calling prayer meetings. And really today, what I have is a call to intercession. That's all it is. It's a call to intercession. So Revelation chapter 8, if you're there, I just ask you to follow with me. This is in the context of prayer, by the way. Verse 1 says, when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. How much?
Half an hour.
Half an hour. And I saw the seven angels who stand before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. How many?
7.
The reason I make you repeat this is not just to fight insecurities, but they are actually key words for the scripture, for our message today. Verse 3. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the where?
Altar.
Altar. We'll speak about the altar in a minute. And what happened there? He was given much incense. That's an interesting distinction. Much incense. That he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and earthquakes. It's another in the book of Revelation. If you go with me to Revelation chapter 5, verse 8. And it reads, now when he had taken the scroll, the four living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on earth. If you forget absolutely everything I say today, like my wife
my prayers
have an incidence
have an
in the
incidence
spiritual
in
realm.
the spiritual
Turn to the
realm.
person next to you and say, did you know that when I pray, things happen in the spiritual realm?
Do you know that when I pray, things happen in the spiritual
My
realm?
prayers,
I'm very
my
convinced of that.
prayers have an incidence in the spiritual
They're
realm.
aware.
Why do I say this? Why do we need to know this? Why do we need to be reminded of this? Well, I'll give you statistics from Barna from 2022. 20% of Americans believe God carries out his will without prayer. This is the Christian nation. 14% of Americans don't know if or how God responds to prayer. I haven't gotten to the bad ones yet. 2% of prayers are collective legal prayers. 2%. Which begs the question, when does the church in America gather to pray? If you go across any pastor and you go, when does the church pray? Most of those these days, they'll go, oh, well, they'll start talking about the great Sunday program. On Sunday, you also teach, and you have an illustration, and you have an announcement, and you go, really, you don't gather to pray, you gather to do what you do on Sunday. Well, when does the church pray? Well, we have small groups, pray in a small group, okay? The problem with those is not all churches included. And you gather to do other things, not just pray. You go, well, it's a fortune doing a small groups, they have a time of prayer. They also have cake. So the question is, when does the church gather for the sole purpose of prayer like in the book of the Acts? Because it seems to me like it is one of our commandments and one of our roles as the church. Our prayers have an incidence in the spiritual realm. Remember what Matthew 16:19 says? And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, that when the saints pray, things happen. We make some examples. But I want to ask you a question today. Have you ever thought about how does heaven receive your prayer? We just looked vaguely at some examples of what happens on earth when we pray. Moses, the Red Sea opened. Joshua, the Jordan opens. Elisha, fire on the sacrifice. Paul and Silas, and on and on and on and on and on. Daniel. Earthly examples of what happens on earth when we pray. But if you could just speak to heaven a little bit and see what happens in heaven as we pray. Have you ever wondered? I have a 7-year-old daughter and 6-year-old son. And my daughter has a condition called FOMO, and it's called fear of missing out. So she needs to be a part of every conversation. She needs to be a part of everything that happens. She needs to. If she could, she would watch the news constantly. So she's always trying to be part of things that are not us for business. The other day, I was talking to my wife in the room, and as I'm going out to work, I opened the door, and she had her ear right on the door, and as I came out, she did not know what move to make me believe she was doing something else. There's nothing outside my room. I told Lydia, I better be glad we weren't telling each other our truths when this girl was outside. You could today, just like my daughter and me at home, speak it. Speak. As the saints, I didn't mean as they meditate and wonder, but as they do the prayer. What happens when we pray? So this is what I want to say to her. A few minutes and let's not preach. And this is where we go to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Now please, theologians in the room, I know some of you are going, well, that number's not literal, and some of you are going, well, it is kind of literal. Some of you are going, it is literal. Look, my friends, go to gracewilliams.com, and we talked for 3 months on eschatology, and find it there. What I want you to focus on today is on the spiritual dynamic of the God who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. What happens in heaven when we pray? Revelation 8:1. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. So I wonder, we look at each other, we go, it's too silent. Who's going to go? Okay, you go. Therefore, our readiness, when we set our hearts, when we say, let's go, seek the Lord, and we set our hearts to pray and seek Him in spirit and in truth, not just an exercise to get through a program, but we say, God, I came to encounter you, and I'm not going to leave until I do. Heaven goes silent. Saints begin to pray. Okay, all right. Everybody's doing their own thing in heaven, and we all have a series on heaven too. If you're wondering, you go to gracewilliams.com, and everybody's praising and doing whatever is it that they do in heaven, and 82% from Barna again. 82% of prayers in America are silent. 2% of prayers are audible with another person or group. 2. If this dynamic is true and the stats are true, picture this. Let's get ready to pray. Everybody gets ready. Seems like they're going to pray. So what happens in heaven at the beginning? Ah! Oh no, never mind. I thought they were going to pray. Get back to what you were doing, guys. Let's go to verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. The interesting thing about trumpets is that trumpets always announce the readiness of God to move. If you like to watch movies, like my wife, I always read my Bible, but my wife always, if you, so I'm finishing the book of Psalms, she's going to season 2 of I don't know what, but if you're to watch movies, depending on what time in history or what season you see the movie, you watch, you hear a different trumpet sound, but it's usually a trumpet that announces the king's entry. It kind of gives you a heads up. Get ready. He's coming. Get your stuff together. Fix your hair. Because the king, the one who is in charge, the one that rules, the one that has control over everything that happens in this place is about to come. Trumpets announce God's readiness to move. These trumpets are given to them. We don't know by who, but we know that they gave it to them. They didn't get them out of their pocket. The angels were not created with some trumpets in their wings. There is someone in heaven apparently assigned to give the angels 7 trumpets. And that comes after the silence. So, 82% of prayers are silent, 2% of prayers are audible with another person or group, 2% of prayers are collective with the church. So heaven is giving heaven. Hey, those Greek guys again. Oh yeah, seems like they're gonna. Yeah, we're getting ready to pray. Yeah? Yep. Ah! Yep. Roach tries to set a trumpet and begins to give one to the first angel, and the angel begins to play the trumpet. Now I want you to picture this then. Saints are going to pray. They went back home. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry about that, guys. Didn't mean to ruin anyone's day. Verse 3. We see silence. We see the trumpets. Now we see an altar. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at where? The altar. And in there he was given much incense. You know what much means in the original Greek? It's pretty amazing. You ready to write it down? It means much. A lot. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar. And where was this golden altar? It was before the throne. I would like to propose to you today that the altar is not something, but the altar is someone. Hebrews 13:10 refers to Jesus as our altar. Jesus is our intercessor before the Father. Jesus is our intercessor in heaven. The Holy Spirit is our intercessor in earth. You ever wonder what Jesus is doing? You ever thought about what? I know Jesus lives in your heart. He lives in your heart by the Holy Spirit, but he's physically sitting on the throne in heaven. You ever wonder what Jesus is doing in heaven? He's praying for you. He's interceding on your behalf. But sometimes, oh boy, we pray something. I thank God that I have an intercessor in heaven. And I thank God those prayers didn't get as answered. They were wasted. I didn't hear. Oh, yeah. You know, sometimes you think you're interceding with your flesh, and Lord, my father-in-law, take him or I'll send them. That's not. He says, God, Father, what do you mean to speak with yourself? This is yours. I have a great relationship with my father-in-law. It was just an example. I want to clarify that because my wife didn't like it. So if the altar is Christ, then that altar is interceding. Hebrews 7:25, therefore he's able to save to the uttermost those who come to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Thank God. How many of you thank God for our intercessor in heaven, and thank God for the Holy Spirit, our intercessor on earth? So, we see the silence, we see the trumpets, and we see the golden altar before God. Precious smoke of that sacrifice that saved us. Precious That's the next thing that happens. Apparently, some angels struggle with some overweight, and they just need to catch a breath. No, don't laugh at me like you all are skinny angels. How many of you know that incense is a picture of prayer? Incense is a picture of prayer. This chapter is in the context of prayer. Jesus is the altar that is burning before the Father. There is incense coming out of the altar. So when we know that the angel, as we begin to pray, now begins to collect your prayer. Goes around, takes some from this room, takes some from the back, takes the Green Bay, the Marcy Packer, hallelujah. Goes to the children's room and takes up those sincere prayers that come from their heart. Maybe we need to go back and pray like little kids. Mommy and daddy, your daddy, your daddy. And takes that child and look at every tear, every word, every burden for the prodigal son, for that kid that has an addiction, for that family member in the hospital, or maybe for the healing of our nation, that if something doesn't happen in less than a decade, a lot of us will have to get our keys and find somebody else. What's going to happen if the U.S. looks like New York? Or when the government tries to take your kid because you don't want to teach them gender identity, so you're no longer fit to take care of your kid. Oh, brother, that's in the movies. No, that's in science. Listen, you're just a 16-hour plane away. But the interesting thing is that the Bible says that he's also given incense from the altar. Because truly, what I just spoke to you about really, it's just an introduction. I'm about to start preaching now. I want to talk to you about this mixture. Because the angel picks up the prayers of the saints, but we also read that he's given incense from the altar. And for that to be mixed and thrown at heaven. Mixture. He was burning before the altar. He's burning before the Father, before the throne. Don't forget that without fire, there's no incense. Without sacrifice, there's no fire. And that sacrifice, for that incense, you were never able to pay. You will never be able to pay for it. So we've learned in the past years in the church about that incense and about that altar and how great it is and how Jesus paid the price for it and we can't earn it. And that's true. That incense is for your salvation. But my friends, it is the mixture of your prayers with what God is doing in heaven that changes things on earth. Oh, brother, I'm a new covenant believer. That incense is for me. Yes, but what mess you're leaving us behind because you don't want to do what the church is called to do. Could it be that in America, the bowl is half empty? Could it be that the angels scraping the bottom of the and the people that need to forgive them are not? It's why I'm praying every day for a generation of intercessors. Wonder if the angels going around wondering if someone will ever decide absolute treasure. Well, God doesn't want to do it. Yes, He does. That altar is burning. There's smoke, there's incense coming out of there. But what causes transformation, like we read in Matthew 16, on earth is the mixture. This mixture is better explained in verse 4 of chapter 8 of Revelation. And the smoke of the incense, is the key word, with. The smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God like fire. Because when this mixture happens, that's where answer to prayer comes. Revelation in verse 5, the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And what's the result of that? Noises, thunderings, lightnings, earthquakes. What is this but look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 19. What is all this lightnings and earthquakes? Well, if you go to Revelation chapter 11, verse 19, it says, then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of His covenant was in His temple. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, an earthquake, and a great hail. You know what this is? The manifestation of the presence and power of God. The great mixture. For some strange reason, God decided to make us participants of transformation here on earth. Through what? Through prayer and intercession. Through prayer and intercession. Well, brother, I don't need all those spiritual exercises because God, there's incense before the Father and it's burning on my behalf. Yes, but what are you going to leave to your children down on earth? What a mess! Don't blame the mess you leave behind on sovereignty when you weren't willing to pray. Because God did give us the answer. God did give Takes yours cross that bridge when I get there, meaning a month after he gets in.